The Gladiator Queen needed a champion, and she chose a human. Welcome to the world of science fiction. Comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Sure, here's part 1 of the story. Let me know when you're ready for the next part, and I'll generate it. The Kalor throne room was nothing short of a spectacle. Towering crystalline pillars stretched upward, catching the twin sun's rays and scattering them across the polished obsidian floor. Alien diplomats from a dozen star systems had gathered for what was supposed to be a day of unity and celebration. Instead, whispers of unease rippled through the crowd as Xyra, the 13-foot-tall queen of Kalora, stood before them. Her presence was commanding. She wore ceremonial battle armor that gleamed in the sun, accentuating her powerful physique and shimmering blue skin. Her crown, a spiked metallic circlet, sat high on her head, and her piercing violet eyes scanned the room. Yet beneath her calm demeanor, there was a tension she could not ignore. The warlord Drak, one of the most ruthless generals in her court, had challenged her authority, a betrayal she should have seen coming. Drak stepped forward, his scared face twisted into a cruel grin. He was nearly as tall as Xyra, but bulkier, with 4 thick arms and a chest adorned with marks of his victories. His voice echoed through the chamber, sharp and accusatory. "Your Majesty, you have grown weak. Our people demand strength, yet you cling to diplomacy while the galaxy sees us as prey. It is time for a ruler who understands power." The murmurs grew louder. Xyra's gaze locked onto him, unflinching. "You accuse me of weakness, Drak, but it takes more strength to maintain peace than to start wars. You seek power not for Kalora's sake, but for your own ambition." Drak laughed, a deep guttural sound that reverberated through the hall. "Fine words, my queen, but words will not save you. I challenge your claim to the throne. Let the galaxy decide who deserves to rule." Xyra's stomach tightened. The challenge was not just a political maneuver. It invoked the ancient law of combat, a gladiatorial tournament where champions would battle for their ruler's honor. If she refused, her reign would crumble under accusations of cowardice. But there was a bigger problem. Her court was riddled with traitors. Many of her best warriors had already been bribed or threatened into loyalty to Drak. She had no one she could trust. The crowd awaited her response. Xyra squared her shoulders, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "I accept your challenge, Drak, but know this. I will not falter, and I will not lose." Drak's smirk widened. He bowed mockingly and turned to leave, his followers trailing behind him. The room erupted into chaotic chatter, and Xyra could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on her. She needed a champion, someone unexpected and uncontrollable, someone Drak wouldn't see coming. As the court dispersed, Xyra retreated to her private chamber. The ornate room, adorned with relics of Kaloran history, felt suffocating. She paced back and forth, her mind racing. Her advisors had already made it clear that none of the remaining Kaloran warriors could be trusted. The tournament would begin in 3 days, and she had no one to fight for her. That night, as Xyra scanned through holographic profiles of potential fighters across the galaxy, her eyes fell on something peculiar, a human gladiator, small by Kaloran standards, fighting in the backwater arenas of the Vorex moon. His name was Ryan Carter. The footage showed him weaving through a pack of hulking alien combatants, using agility and clever tactics to outmaneuver opponents twice his size. He wasn't the strongest, but there was something about his resourcefulness and sheer audacity that caught her attention. "Bring him to me," Xyra ordered her guards. They hesitated, glancing at one another. "Is that wise, Your Majesty, the human?" Xyra turned to face them, her towering figure casting a shadow across the room. "Do you question my judgment?" The guards bowed deeply and left without another word. Xyra stared at the holographic image of Ryan, wondering if this gamble would save her throne or seal her fate. Ryan Carter wiped blood off his lip, grinning as he walked off the dusty arena floor. The crowd cheered half-heartedly. Most of them had come to see someone else win. The human gladiator was a novelty act at best, an underdog who somehow managed to survive against creatures 10 times his size. But Ryan didn't care about glory. He cared about the credits. Back in the cramped, dimly lit locker room, Ryan leaned against a bench and counted his winnings. It wasn't much, barely enough to get him to the next fight. Life as a human gladiator wasn't glamorous, but it was better than going back to Earth, a place he'd left behind long ago. "You call that a fight?" a voice snarled. Ryan looked up to see a reptilian alien towering over him, its yellow eyes glaring. "You're a joke, Carter. One day someone's going to squash you like the insect you are." Ryan smirked. "And yet here I am, still alive. Guess that makes me smarter than you." The alien growled, but before it could lunge, the locker room door burst open. 2 Caloran guards entered, their golden armor gleaming. The room fell silent as everyone turned to stare. "Ryan Carter," one of them announced. "The Queen of Calora summons you." Ryan blinked. "The Queen of what now?" "Calora," the guard repeated, stepping closer. "You are to come with us immediately." Ryan stood, holding up his hands. "Whoa, hold on. I'm not sure if you've got the right guy. I'm just a small-time fighter trying to." "You have been chosen," the guard interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Refusal is not an option." Ryan sighed, glancing around the room. The other gladiators were staring at him, some with confusion, others with envy. He shrugged, grabbing his jacket. "All right, fine. Let's see what royalty wants with me." The journey to Calora was a blur. Ryan was shoved onto a sleek alien ship and whisked away at speeds that made his stomach churn. When they arrived, the sheer scale of Calora's capital city left him speechless. The towering spires, the glowing bridges, the bustling sky filled with ships. It was like nothing he'd ever seen. He was led into the palace, his jaw dropping as he entered the throne room. And then he saw her, Queen Xyra. She was massive, her presence overwhelming. Her violet eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, Ryan forgot how to breathe. "You're smaller than I expected," she said, her voice calm but sharp. Ryan regained his composure, crossing his arms. "And you're taller than I expected. Guess we're both surprised." A flicker of amusement crossed her face. "I need a champion," she said, "someone who can win against overwhelming odds." "I believe that someone is you." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Me? Look, I don't know what you've heard, but I'm just a guy trying to make a living. I'm not exactly galactic savior material." Xyra stepped closer, towering over him. "You underestimate yourself, human. You've survived where others would have fallen. That makes you valuable to me." Ryan hesitated. The idea of fighting in some grand tournament for an alien queen sounded insane, but the way she looked at him, as if he were her only hope, stirred something in him. "All right," he said finally. "I'll do it. But this better pay well." Xyra nodded. "You'll be rewarded beyond your wildest dreams. But first, you'll need to prove yourself." As they walked out of the throne room together, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change forever. The alien palace loomed around Ryan, every corner feeling impossibly vast and dripping with wealth. He could barely keep up with Xyra's long strides as she led him through a labyrinth of crystalline hallways. Her guards followed closely, silent and watchful. Ryan, ever the outlier, couldn't help but crack a joke. "You know, you guys could charge admission just for people to walk around this place. I'd pay well if I had the money." Xyra glanced back, her expression unreadable. "This is no amusement park, human. Calora's palace is a symbol of strength and history. It reminds my people what they fight for." "Cool, cool," Ryan muttered. "But seriously, do the hallways have to be this long? I feel like I'm in a cardio session." One of the guards let out a low growl, but Xyra raised a hand to silence him. "Enough. We're here." The queen stopped before a massive door, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and shimmer under the light. She placed her hand on a glowing panel, and the doors groaned open, revealing what could only be described as a high-tech Gladiator training facility. Ryan stepped inside, his eyes widening. The room was filled with weapon racks, holographic dummies, and training bots that whirred with energy. Alien warriors sparred in the distance, their movements precise and deadly. The air buzzed with tension and the faint hum of machinery. "Wow," Ryan said, turning in a slow circle. "This is like something out of a sci-fi movie." "Wait, scratch that. I'm literally living in one now." Xyra ignored his comment and gestured to the center of the room, where a holographic ring hovered above the ground. "Your training begins now." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Training? I thought I was already good enough." "You know, that's why you picked me, right? Because I'm awesome." Xyra's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. "Confidence is one thing, human. Preparedness is another. If you want to survive this tournament, you'll need to adapt. The opponents you'll face are nothing like what you've seen in your quaint little moon arenas." "Quaint," Ryan said, feigning offense. "Hey, those arenas were plenty dangerous. I once fought a guy with 6 arms. I still have nightmares about getting slapped 6 times at once." Xyra stepped closer, towering over him. "And how did you win?" Ryan shrugged. "I tricked him. Turns out having 6 arms doesn't help when you can't balance on 2 legs." Xyra stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head. "You'll need more than luck and cheap tricks to win this. Caloran champions are bred for combat. They are stronger, faster, and far more ruthless than anything you've encountered. Your resourcefulness is admirable, but it won't be enough." Okay, Ryan said, raising his hands in surrender. "I get it. I'm the underdog. So what's the plan? Oh, mighty queen. Do I get a fancy sword? A jetpack, maybe?" Xyra didn't respond. Instead, she snapped her fingers, and one of her guards approached, carrying a large circular object. It looked like a metal disc with glowing blue edges about the size of a dinner plate. "What's that?" Ryan asked, eyeing it warily. "Your first lesson," Xyra said, taking the disc from the guard. She pressed a button on its surface, and it sprang to life, hovering in the air and spinning rapidly. "This is a Caloran combat drone. Its sole purpose is to attack and incapacitate its target. Your job is to avoid it." Ryan frowned. "Avoid it? That's it. Sounds easy enough." Xyra smirked. "We'll see." With a flick of her wrist, she sent the drone hurtling toward him. Ryan barely had time to react as it zipped past his head, emitting a sharp electric crackle. He ducked instinctively, the drone looping back around for another pass. Whoa, hold on," Ryan shouted, diving to the floor as the drone zipped by again. "You could have warned me." "I did," Xyra said calmly. "Your job is to avoid it." Ryan scrambled to his feet, his heart racing. The drone hovered menacingly, then shot toward him like a missile. He jumped out of the way, landing awkwardly and nearly twisting his ankle. "All right," he muttered, rolling to his feet. "If that's how you want to play it." The drone came at him again, but this time Ryan was ready. He sidestepped at the last second, letting it zoom past. It adjusted course almost immediately, spinning around to attack again. Ryan ducked, dodged, and weaved, his movements growing more fluid with each pass. Xyra watched with a critical eye. Despite his lack of formal training, the human had a natural agility that couldn't be taught. He was quick on his feet and surprisingly good at predicting the drone's movements. Still, she wasn't about to let him off easy. "Good," she said. "Now let's increase the difficulty." She pressed another button on the drone's control panel, and the device emitted a sharp, high-pitched whine. 2 smaller drones detached from its sides, joining the fray. "You've got to be kidding me," Ryan groaned as the new drones circled him like vultures. "This is some next-level hazing, isn't it?" The drones attacked in unison, forcing Ryan to move faster than ever. He ducked under one, jumped over another, and narrowly avoided a third. Sweat dripped down his face as he pushed himself to keep up. I'm starting to think I should have stayed on that moon, he panted, dodging another attack. At least there I only had to fight one thing at a time. Xyra didn't respond. She was too busy analyzing his performance. The human was unrefined, yes, but there was a spark of potential there. With the right guidance, he might just stand a chance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the drones powered down and returned to Xyra's side. Ryan collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. "Not bad," Xyra said, standing over him. "You survived longer than I expected." "Gee, thanks," Ryan wheezed. "Glad to know I exceeded your very low expectations." Xyra extended a hand, pulling him to his feet with ease. "Rest for now. Your training will resume tomorrow." Ryan groaned but didn't argue. He was too exhausted to do anything but follow her as she led him out of the training room and into a smaller, more private chamber. "This will be your quarters," Xyra said, gesturing to the room. It was modest by Caloran standards, but to Ryan, it looked like a five-star hotel. A plush bed, a desk with holographic displays, and even a small window overlooking the city. "Not bad," Ryan said, flopping onto the bed. "You know, for someone who's trying to kill me with flying murder discs, you're not half bad at hospitality." Xyra crossed her arms, her expression softening ever so slightly. "Get some sleep, human. Tomorrow we'll see if you're truly worthy of being my champion." As she turned to leave, Ryan called out, "Hey, Xyra." She paused, looking back at him. "Thanks for, giving me a chance." Her violet eyes lingered on him for a moment before she nodded and walked away. Ryan stared at the ceiling, wondering what he'd gotten himself into. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a purpose, something worth fighting for. The next morning, Ryan woke to the sound of a loud blaring tone echoing through his quarters. He groaned, covering his head with a pillow in a futile attempt to block out the noise. "5 more minutes," he muttered. The tone stopped abruptly, replaced by Xyra's calm but firm voice over an intercom. "Your training begins in 5 minutes. I suggest you prepare yourself." Ryan sat up, groggy, his hair sticking up in odd angles. Do alien queens ever sleep, or do you all run on caffeine and intimidation? Muttering to himself, he quickly threw on his clothes and stumbled out into the hallway. A guard was already waiting to escort him back to the training room. The walk felt shorter this time, though Ryan wasn't sure if it was because he was more awake or because he was dreading what Xyra had in store for him. When he arrived, the training room was already alive with activity. Alien warriors sparred in pairs, their movements so fast and precise that Ryan could barely follow. Xyra stood near the center of the room, watching as a massive alien with spiked armor swung a mace at a holographic target. "Good. Increase your speed," she commanded, her voice carrying effortlessly over the noise. Ryan approached her hesitantly. "Morning, Your Majesty. What fresh torture do you have planned for me today?" Xyra turned to him, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. "Today we focus on strategy. Strength and agility are important, but in the tournament, you'll face opponents who are bigger, stronger, and more experienced than you. If you rely solely on brute force, you'll lose." "Good thing I've never been much for brute force," Ryan said with a smirk. "So what's the plan? Chess? Checkers? Galactic rock, paper, scissors?" Xyra ignored his sarcasm and gestured toward a large circular arena in the center of the room. "You'll spar with a training partner. The goal is to outthink them, not overpower them." Ryan's smirk faded. "Spar with who?" A low growl answered his question. Ryan turned to see a hulking alien step into the arena. Its leathery gray skin gleamed under the overhead lights. The creature was at least 8 feet tall, with 4 muscular arms and a pair of sharp tusks protruding from its jaw. "But I think you've got the wrong guy," Ryan said, taking a step back. "I'm not exactly built for going toe-to-toe with the big guy over there." "This is Drolok," Xyra said, ignoring his protest. "He's one of my most skilled warriors. If you can last 3 minutes against him, you'll have passed today's lesson. 3 minutes. Ryan's voice cracked slightly. I don't suppose there's a beginner's version of this, is there? Xyra crossed her arms. You wanted to be my champion, did you not? Ryan sighed. Fine. But if I get squished into a human pancake, I'm holding you personally responsible. Drolok stepped into the arena, his movements surprisingly graceful for someone so large. He eyed Ryan with a mix of curiosity and disdain, his tusks gleaming as he grinned. The Queen has an odd sense of humor, sending a human to spar with me. Yeah. Well, I didn't exactly volunteer for this, Ryan muttered, stepping into the arena reluctantly. He glanced at Xyra. Any tips before I get flattened? Stay alive, she said simply. Helpful, Ryan muttered under his breath. The match began with a loud gong, and Drolok wasted no time lunging at Ryan. The human barely managed to roll out of the way, the alien's fist slamming into the ground where he'd just been standing. The impact sent a tremor through the arena. Okay, great start, Ryan said, scrambling to his feet. Let's see if I can keep all my bones intact. Drolok came at him again, swinging two of his massive arms in a wide arc. Ryan ducked and darted to the side, his smaller size allowing him to slip through the gaps in the alien's attacks. He circled around Drolok, trying to stay out of reach. Running won't save you, Drolok growled, turning to face him. Fight like a warrior. I'll fight like a warrior when I stop feeling like a chew toy, Ryan shot back. Drolok charged, his tusks aimed directly at Ryan's chest. Thinking fast, Ryan grabbed a nearby training staff and jabbed it into the ground. He vaulted over Drolok's head, landing awkwardly behind him. Cheap tricks won't save you, Drolok roared, rubbing at his eyes. They're working so far, Ryan said, backing away. With Drolok momentarily distracted, Ryan grabbed another training staff and jabbed it at the alien's legs. The staff struck a sensitive joint, and Drolok stumbled, dropping to one knee. Ryan didn't wait for him to recover. He scrambled onto the alien's back, wrapping his arms around Drolok's thick neck in a chokehold. Tap out, big guy, Ryan shouted. Or do aliens not have a word for surrender? Drolok growled and thrashed, but Ryan held on, using all his strength to maintain the chokehold. Finally, the gong sounded, signaling the end of the match. Ryan released Drolok and collapsed onto the ground, panting heavily. Drolok glared at him, but offered a grudging nod of respect. Well done, human, the alien said. You fight with more cunning than I expected. I'll take that as a compliment, Ryan said between gasps for air. Xyra stepped into the arena, her expression unreadable. You survived. Barely. Ryan sat up, wincing. Hey, surviving is what I do best. Xyra extended a hand to help him up. You showed resourcefulness today, but you still have much to learn. This tournament will not be forgiving. Ryan took her hand, letting her pull him to his feet. Yeah, well, I've got you to keep me on my toes, right? Xyra raised an eyebrow. Indeed. As they left the arena, Ryan couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride. He might be out of his depth, but for the first time, he felt like he had a chance. All he had to do was survive one day at a time. The crowd inside the massive Colosseum orbiting the black hole was unlike anything Ryan had ever seen. Alien spectators of all shapes, sizes, and species packed the stands, their cheers a cacophony of sounds that made his ears ring. The tournament was finally underway, and the first rounds had begun. Ryan stood in the fighters' preparation area, peering out at the chaos through a massive reinforced window. Tell me this gets easier, Ryan said, glancing at Xyra, who stood beside him with her usual air of calm authority. It doesn't, Xyra replied, her piercing violet eyes scanning the arena. The further you advance, the more dangerous the opponents become. If you survive the early rounds, you'll face champions with decades of experience, and no mercy. Super motivational. Thanks, Ryan muttered. He adjusted the strange lightweight armor Xyra had provided for him. It was sleek and alien in design, with glowing blue lines running across the chest plate and gauntlets. "This stuff isn't going to magically make me invincible, is it?" "It will protect you from minor injuries," Xyra said, "but it's no substitute for skill." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Great. Guess I'll have to rely on my charming personality, then." Xyra tilted her head slightly, the closest she ever came to expressing amusement. "Your personality may distract the crowd, but it won't save you in combat." Before Ryan could reply, a deep guttural roar echoed from the arena, drawing his attention back to the massive holographic screens above the Coliseum floor. The current match was between two towering reptilian fighters, their blows shaking the ground as they clashed. One of them landed a brutal strike, sending their opponent crashing into a wall with a sickening crunch. The crowd erupted in cheers as the announcer declared the victor. Ryan swallowed hard. "You know, watching these matches isn't exactly doing wonders for my confidence." "Then stop watching," Xyra said, her tone firm. "Focus on your own match. Your first opponent is waiting." The words sent a jolt of nervous energy through Ryan. He turned to Xyra, his usual bravado faltering. "Any last-minute advice?" Xyra placed a hand on his shoulder, the weight of her touch both comforting and intimidating. "Trust your instincts, but don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. Use the environment to your advantage, and remember, you're not fighting just for yourself. You're fighting for me, for my people." Ryan nodded, taking the deep breath. No pressure, then. As the announcer called his name, Ryan stepped into the corridor leading to the arena. The walls pulsed with energy, the hum of alien technology reverberating beneath his feet. The corridor opened into a massive battlefield, its terrain ever-shifting thanks to the advanced holographic systems that created obstacles, traps, and hiding spots. The crowd's noise hit him like a tidal wave as he stepped onto the field. He shielded his eyes against the bright lights and scanned the arena. His opponent, a bulky insectoid alien with 4 sharp limbs and a chitinous exoskeleton, stood at the opposite end, its mandibles clicking menacingly. "Oh good, a bug," Ryan muttered. "I hate bugs." The announcer's voice boomed through the arena, introducing the fighters in multiple alien languages before finally switching to a translation Ryan could understand. In this corner, representing the Queen of Calora, the resourceful human underdog, Ryan Carter. The crowd responded with a mix of cheers and laughter. Ryan grinned and gave a mock bow, playing up his role as the underdog. Thank you. I'll be here all night." And in the other corner, the announcer continued, the relentless predator of Vars Prime, the Razor Claw. The insectoid alien screeched, its limbs clicking as it crouched low, ready to pounce. Ryan tensed, his mind racing. He couldn't outmuscle this thing, but maybe he could outsmart it. The gong sounded, and Razor Claw charged, its movements unnervingly fast. Ryan barely had time to roll out of the way as one of its sharp limbs stabbed into the ground where he'd been standing. Okay, Ryan muttered, scrambling to his feet. "Let's not make this personal." The Razor Claw hissed and lunged again, forcing Ryan to dodge and weave as it swiped at him with deadly precision. He grabbed a nearby staff from the arena's weapon rack and swung it at the creature's legs, trying to knock it off balance. The staff struck with a loud clang, but Razor Claw barely flinched, its exoskeleton absorbing the blow. "Of course you've got armor," Ryan said, backing away. "Why wouldn't you?" The Razor Claw lunged again, and this time Ryan used the staff to vault himself over the creature's head. He landed behind it and sprinted toward a cluster of boulders generated by the arena's holographic system. The terrain shifted as he ran, new obstacles rising from the ground while others disappeared. The Razor Claw chased him relentlessly, its claws scraping against the boulders as it closed the distance. Ryan ducked behind a rock and grabbed a handful of sand, flinging it at the creature's face as it rounded the corner. The sand hit its compound eyes, causing it to shriek and stagger back. "Yeah, not so tough now, are you?" Ryan taunted, his confidence returning. The Resorclaw shook off the sand and let out a furious roar, its movements becoming even more erratic. It swiped at Ryan with all four limbs, forcing him to retreat further into the maze of shifting terrain. He spotted a narrow passage between two walls of rock and darted through it, the Resorclaw close behind. As he ran, Ryan noticed a pool of glowing liquid near the edge of the arena. It was part of the arena's environmental hazards, a viscous substance that looked both toxic and volatile. An idea began to form in his mind. Ryan led the Resorclaw toward the pool, dodging its attacks as he went. When he reached the edge, he turned to face the creature, gripping the staff tightly. "All right, big guy," he said. "Let's dance." The Resorclaw charged, its claws raised for a killing blow. At the last second, Ryan sidestepped, using the staff to trip the creature. The Resorclaw stumbled, its momentum carrying it forward into the glowing liquid. The pool hissed and bubbled as the Resorclaw thrashed, its exoskeleton dissolving under the corrosive substance. The creature let out a final piercing shriek before going still. The crowd erupted into cheers and gasps, their excitement palpable. Ryan dropped the staff and collapsed onto the ground, breathing heavily. "I can't believe that worked." The announcer's voice boomed through the arena. "And the winner, by sheer cunning and determination, Carter." Ryan waved weakly at the crowd, then looked up to see Xyra watching from a high balcony. Her expression was unreadable, but she gave him a small nod of approval. As the medics helped him off the field, Ryan couldn't help but grin. He'd survived his first match. Barely. But if he was going to keep this up, he'd need more than luck. He'd need a plan. Ryan sat on the cold metal bench in the Gladiator preparation area, nursing a bruise on his side that was already blossoming into an ugly shade of purple. His body ached from the match, every muscle protesting his earlier acrobatics. The medics had patched him up quickly, their strange alien devices numbing most of the pain, but fatigue still weighed heavily on him. Xyra entered the room silently, her towering figure radiating authority. The other fighters and guards gave her a wide berth, but Ryan just raised an eyebrow when she approached him. "Come to tell me how reckless I was, or maybe congratulate me for not getting turned into bug food?" he asked, wincing as he shifted on the bench.